Hi everybody, thanks for allowing me the privilege to come and stand here. As Sue mentioned, my name is Mark Bishop. My background is I run my own business now, but over the last couple of years I've become pretty passionate about water, and there's a lot of things that I've sort of learned in the last couple of years, so we've sort of put a PowerPoint together. It's probably going to take about 6 or 7 hours, lots of information. That's okay, no, I'm joking. 20 minutes, 25 minutes and you'll all be out of here. So, you know, there is quite a bit of stuff to go through, so let me just maybe jump straight into it and it's not, I've tried to make it like sort of layman's terms. So if you have got some questions, maybe just hold on to them because it'll probably be answered during the actual presentation, but if not, then we can maybe just chat at the end. Is that okay? Okay, so why is water important? I don't know if you've ever actually asked yourself that. You know, water is pretty much important because you are what you drink. So we are mainly composed up of water. So if you have a look at it, our blood is made up of 92%, our bones are 22%, our lungs are 90%, our muscles are 75%, and our brain is 75% water. So we're mainly made up of water. Okay. So what does actual water do for you? Well, it does many things, but pretty much what it does is improves your overall health and well-being. It helps protect against a variety of ailments, improves the appearance of your skin, it helps you to lose weight. Okay, and it starts off the Grim Reaper, which is a pretty good thing. Okay, I don't know, was it only me? Just checking. Okay, so what happens is, I'm sure you've heard of that sort of example or analogy where they say one can get away with not eating for quite some time. It's around about 3 weeks. Okay, the problem that comes with water though is that once you start to become dehydrated, look at what happens now with the percentages. When you're 1% dehydrated, you're obviously going to get thirsty. Okay, does anybody feel like drinking some water? 5% causes you a slight fever. 8% causes your glands to stop producing saliva, your skin to turn blue. At 10%, your tongue swells, your kidneys start to fail, your muscles go into spasms, walking becomes impossible. At 20%, your skin cracks, your organs grind to halt, and death occurs. And that's only at 20%. Okay, so what it does, the functions that water provides around the body is many. But in simplified sort of terms, it transports vitamins and nutrients to your cells, tissues and organs. It moistens your eyes, your mouth, your nasal passages. It regulates your body's temperature. It carries oxygen to the cells, flushes your kidneys of toxic substances, provides lubrication for your joints. It balances your electrolytes, which helps you to control your blood pressure, and it reduces the risk of everything from colds to cancer. That's just some of the things that it does. Okay. So my thinking, and you probably might relate to that, is if you're going to look at your water, it smells okay, it looks pretty clean, therefore it must be clean. That's what we all assume. The problem with that is it's actually not like that. Okay. So what happened? Let's just go back a little bit now. Obviously, a long time ago, there were a lot less people. Okay. And what started to happen is people became more. They started to congregate and started to go to the cities. Too many people started, there was too much ingestion of our waste, and what ended up happening then was plague started. Okay, so what happened then was that pretty much 1 in 1,000 people were dying from cholera. Okay, that's what in the 1900s, cholera and typhoid. So Chicago was the first city globally that decided what they were going to do to try and combat this was they were going to add chlorine to the water, and which is a good thing. Okay. Now, what chlorine does is it gives you protection against a lot of your waterborne diseases. And what ended up happening, because they added chlorine into the water, your urban life expectancy increased by about 50% in the last half century, which is amazing. Okay. So I've mentioned already that in the old days, let's say the big sort of major killers was your cholera and your typhoid in the last, so let's say 100, 120 years. So the question that you need to ask yourself today is, chlorine or cholera? Do you want to be killed slowly or do you want to be killed fast? Because that's what you need to answer. So what I've always learned and what I was sort of taught and found out is that, you know, when you go and you buy a loaf of bread, it comes in a plastic packet. Okay, and why is it like that? It's to keep the bread fresh, obviously. Now, obviously, it would be ludicrous to go and take the bread and eat it with a plastic wrapping. This wouldn't make sense. So that's the thing with chlorine. Think of it as chlorine needs to be in the water, but one needs to take it out the water. You need to have some sort of a system to be able to get rid of it. Okay. So what happens is that if you have a look at the EPA, which is Environmental Protection Agency, what they do is they actually measure the water against known contaminants. So in 1975, they found that there were over 300. Okay? In 1984, there were over 700. And in 2002, there's 1,900. So if one has a look at that graph, it's an exponential rise, which is not a good thing. And the thing is, the EPA only targets 129 of the greatest health threats. Now, what that means is that's not things that are going to give you a little sniffle or a bit of a cold. Those are things that are pretty much going to make you drop dead. Okay, that is what they're targeting. So there's lots and lots of funnies that are in the water that you actually don't know about. Okay, so the actual average that they use in the US is about 0.3 milligrams per liter. That's what you're supposed to be allowed in the actual water. Now, what they do in South Africa is we've got more than 3 times that. Now, the question I asked to myself, and the way that my brain sort of works, is that's in a controlled environment. What is actually happening out there that you don't know? Like if the guys are actually funded correctly, if they're actually following all the correct protocols. So, I mean, it's been known in Durban and certain parts in around the country that it sort of exceeds that times triple or double. So what is actually in our water? So honestly, you might as well just take your cup, go to your pool and drink out the pool water. It's going to be, or you're pretty much doing the same thing. So I know that's a bit harsh, but maybe think about it from that way. So what ends up happening with chlorine? From a health point of view, what happens with chlorine is when it enters your bloodstream, it changes, it becomes something called a chlorinated organic. Now, if you can remember biology at school, I've got to think back many, many years now. But your cells are pretty much these fat, round sort of cells with thick membrane walls, okay? And that's a good healthy cell. Now what happens with that chlorinated organic is it gets into your sort of blood cells and or into your body, and it starts to change the shape of the cells, so the cells become irregular shape, the walls become thin and cracks start to develop. And when that starts to happen, you're then prone to all kinds of diseases and everything else. So that's not a good thing from an actual membrane point of view. Plus also what you have around us is we have something called free radicals. Now free radicals are everywhere. You get them around us, you can't pretty much see them. They're on anything, they're around you all over the place. And what happens with those free radicals is also they're not good for you. They get in there and they start to also destroy the cell, or they get inside the cell and they start to give you sort of bad things. What also ends up happening is from a DNA point of view, what does your cell do? Your cell replicates, not so. It just copies the one cell, makes another one, and so it carries on. So what's going to happen is if you've got a bad cell and it's been damaged, what's going to happen is that cell is just going to replicate itself. You're going to have another bad cell, you're going to have another bad cell, and another bad cell. And when you add all of those together, that means you are then going to be prone to just about anything. Cancers, all kinds of sicknesses, diseases, and whatever else. So that's just in a very, very basic nutshell. There's been lots and lots of research that have been written about cancer. There's massive amounts of information. The big thing that I sort of always chat to guys about is that if you have a look at the South African Cancer Institute, they pretty much say that if you're drinking tap water, you've got more than a 90% chance of getting cancer. Okay, that's pretty, it exceeds. It's well over in the 90s. Okay, so now the one thing that literally gets through our water that chlorine doesn't actually kill, it's something which is called cryptosporidium. Now cryptosporidium, it would probably be like getting a type of a hectic bug. So you've got gypo guts, but it's intense. I mean, in South Africa there's thousands people that die from it a year, but chlorine doesn't actually kill that. Okay, so you have to actually remove that out of there. So I'm going to show you something which is actually does get rid of that. So a lot of people sort of think like if they maybe making some food, they're boiling whatever it is, their veggies in the water, they're going to get some sort of gypo guts. They think it might be that, but it's not that. That's just normal, a little bit of food poisoning or something like that. It's not cryptosporidium. That's hectic stuff. Okay. There's lots and lots of things in the tap water. There's quite a bit of information through here, so I'm going to run through all of this now quite quickly because I don't want to sort of overcomplicate everything here. But literally what you're going to find in your water is different types of bacteria. I've just put some stats on here of certain cases and things happening in and around here and around the world of what's happening. It's in our water. Bacteria, E. coli in Johannesburg was found. I mean, it's disgusting. Intraviruses, they pretty much can get through all filters. These are the diseases that these things cause. Toxic metals they're finding in the water, complements of mining. I mean, what about your copper piping, your lead piping? I'm going to get into that just now. And they found mercury in our water here. Radiation. This is all in the water. Not all of it, but they found it. The organics, petrol paint, diesel thinners, I'll get into that just now as well. Okay, let's just get through all of this here. As one can see, there's some lovely things here. Okay, so we all know what happens with water. It rains. Keep it as simple as possible. The water falls and it ends up somehow in our tap. Okay, so where does it go through? Obviously there's different groundwaters, it gets to treatment parts, and we are right at the bottom of the cycle. Okay, so what does it maybe pass through? What about sort of pesticides? What about all the farmers spraying their crops with stuff? Okay, landfill, dump leakage, lovely things that you find over there. Polluted runoffs. I mean, what about factories leaking, underground storage tanks? Think about it this way. How many petrol stations are there in around South Africa? Loads and loads. All of those tanks are going to allow certain of the petrol or the diesel escapes out of there. None of those tanks are escape proof. Over time, they start to let things through, and those pollutants actually seep into our soil. Your septic tanks. So they go through all of these. And then obviously we're at the end here. So we have a distribution lines. They're obviously coming from the filtration plants. What ends up happening in our roads in South Africa, pretty much most of the piping run next door to each other, generally from a costing point of view. So in other words, you've got one sewer pipe running this way and you've got one water pipe running right next to it. What happens if the sewer pipe breaks? Where does all that stuff go? It's got to go somewhere. Do you know that we live in a dry country? So there's our sort of rainfall. So the water that we're drinking all the time is passing through and is recycled over and over and over again. So that person sitting on your left and on your right, you probably know them a lot better than what you actually should. Promise you, it's coming from somewhere. So what I'm going to chat to you specifically about tonight is what we have a solution. It's called an eSpring. The eSpring is actually the world's #1 water purification system. Okay, not by what I say. They've actually got awards that they've won this. So I'll show you this machine just now. So what it has is it's sort of got a 3-stage sort of process in the actual machine. It's got a carbon block. And what a carbon block does is it's going to remove certain of your contaminants, so things like your chlorine, your toxic metals, your organics, your particles, which gets rid of your bacteria. What it has as well is inside the middle of it is it's got a UV light which pretty much burns the water, which kills all of your viruses. And that's very, very important, okay, because those things get through everything pretty much else. Okay. So what is a carbon block? The best way for me to explain it is think of a sponge that you wash yourself with, but the pores in the sponge are very, very small. It's 0.3 of a micron thick, so it's like 1,000th the size of a human hair. Okay. What it is it's a reactive carbon, and what that does is there's certain particles in the water, and those particles are reacted to that carbon. They get trapped inside there, and they can't escape. And it's very, very small, and there's actually a picture, or there's a good couple of pictures here to show you how small it is. So we can see there's a grain of rice, a sesame seed, and a coffee bean. Okay, so let me go quickly here. Grain of salt. 0.5 millimeters. There's an amoeba. There's a human egg. There's a skin cell. Red blood cell, X chromosome, Baker's yeast, E. coli. Okay, and one can see there's the eSpring spore. So very, very, very small. Okay, so if you had to take it and you had to lay it flat, it's going to fill up more than, how many? 69 soccer fields. How that works, I don't know, because I'm not a scientist. But if you had to lay it out on the road and it was flat, on a flat surface area, 7 meters wide by 63 k's long. Okay, so there's a lot of carbon in there. So as I've already mentioned, what it does is it blocks it keeps all the bad stuff in, but there's also certain nutrients in the water that you actually need to come out. So if you'll probably know what I mean by, have you ever taken water and just put it in a kettle and cooked it and cooked it and cooked it, and then you try and you drink that? The water just doesn't taste nice. It tastes like dead water. Well, you don't want that. There's certain things in the water that are actually good for you. Okay. So there we go. It lets all the good stuff out. So I talked already about the UV light that's located in the center. It puts out 80 millijoules of light, okay, which pretty much destroys 99.99% of all bacteria and viruses, including Cryptosporidium. Okay. It meets a whole bunch of different standards. They actually allow people into their factories, independent people, they can come in there and they can grade these guys. Okay, so it's actually known as the world's #1 because of all of that. There's more than 400 patents on this machine, which is pretty phenomenal if you actually think about it. I mean, most people have only got a patent or two on a certain product. To think there's more than 400 on a machine this big is quite impressive. They've got many, many years worth of research. Okay, over many laboratories, and lots of scientists and things like that. So what I've done as well is I've also compared a couple of the other alternative technologies out there. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. So I've already sort of mentioned the water boiling. You know, some people say, well, I'll just boil my water. Okay, but if you are going to do that, then you need to boil your water for about 20 minutes at a time. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know anybody that boils their water for 20 minutes. They put the kettle on once and they walk away. So you've got to probably do it about 4 times, I would think. Okay, and then it's pretty much going to kill everything in there. You're drinking dead water. Okay, bottled water. There's lots of issues regarding bottled water. So, you know, there's many companies that have actually been bust, that have actually contaminated the water. They literally take the bottles, put it next to the tap, open it up, and they sell it to me and you, and we think we're buying purified water. It may be treated with chemicals. Do yourself a favor, have a look on your actual label of your bottle. You'll see that they add chlorine in there. So there's actually chlorine, there's certain chemicals in there. And you know that your water's got an expiration date. How long has it been sitting in a factory for, on the side of a truck for, until it actually gets into the fridge that you drink it? We don't actually think of that. Often tap water, I've already mentioned that. Yeah, just different guys that got bust for certain things. Natural may not also be okay. You know, I've had some guys that have come to me, what about my borehole water? I don't know. The only thing with borehole water that I would probably suggest is you need to get it checked. Because obviously the water, there's underground water that's coming from somewhere. Who knows what's got into that water? And there might be a lovely ecosystem growing in your borehole. So I don't actually know. Yeah, certain minerals and whatever else, and yeah, some company, they've actually found that there was animal matter in certain water bottles. Fantastic. And I actually remember coming, I think it was quite some time ago, we were chatting to a guy. They actually manufacture the plastic bottles for the Natal area, and he said to me, you have actually no idea how bad those plastic water bottles are. Like, a lot of people take them, they put them back in their fridge and they reuse them. No, you need to throw this. If you are going to use it, take it and throw it away, because those things you give it to your kids and then they sit in the sun, and that plastic actually breaks down and that stuff is in your water and you drink it. So not a very, very good thing. Okay. And it is obviously very, very expensive. I mean, how expensive has water become? I mean, you go today, I mean, obviously we were overseas now. It was very, very expensive everywhere where you go. And it's inconvenient. You know, you're seeing people carrying these two 5 liters and they're backwards and forwards to the car, and they're doing that a couple of times a week. It's not very, very convenient. Okay. There's different types of different types of filters that I'm going to run through now. The big thing with these things is you need to make sure that you're checking and you're changing them very, pretty much like once a month. Okay, a lot of the type of stuff. Reverse osmosis comes up pretty regularly, that people sometimes have these types of systems. The problem with reverse osmosis is it's like your dead water again. It literally removes all the nutrients out of the water. So unless you have a system that is alongside a reverse osmosis machine, which puts it back into the water, you're just drinking dead water. Granular activating carbon, press carbon block. So they've all got certain pros and cons for everything, and ultraviolet. A lot of these systems are all like on its own. There's nothing else that really combines everything, only one that I'm sort of pretty much aware of. And then what I've also started to come across are you getting these new air to water machines. They are sort of coming around there. They are actually very, very good machines. What I have just found about them is that they are pretty biggish, so they're quite bulky. They can sit about this high from a normal domestic use, and obviously they get bigger depending on your consumption. The cheapest model that I've sort of seen is around about 23,000. So they're not exactly, it's quite a lot of money to be paying. And I know that they suggest that you actually you clean your filter every single month, and they suggest that you change your filter every single 6 months. So it can become quite an expensive thing to do. So, but yeah, they are pretty decent machines. What our one does, which I know for a fact, is eSpring improves your taste, your smell, your clarity. It reduces your microorganisms, reduces your particles, your organics, your inorganics, and it retains your benefits, your beneficial minerals, and it's got a monitoring system which I'll show you now, so you don't have to think about anything. Okay? Bottled water, we're not too sure about all the stuff over there. Pour-through filters, tap filters, granular filters, and obviously reverse osmosis. So there's sort of question marks with some of those over there. You're not always 100% sure. Why do I use and distribute eSpring? You know, obviously from a health point of view, absolutely. You know, I like sport. I play a lot of sort of squash. I do quite a bit of running, and I've always been involved with sport my whole life. And up until a couple of years ago, what we used to do as a family is I like water, and I always used to take water. I used to fill up my water bottles, put it in the fridge, and I used to just drink it. And I thought that was fine. What I didn't realize is I'm actually just drinking bad water. So, you know, what's the point of me staying healthy and fit, and I'm actually just putting rubbish down my system? So in hindsight, what I should have done is I should have just had lots and lots of beer sitting in the fridge, because at least the water then would have been filtered, so I would have been okay. So, you know, you know, I love ones. You know, we've got young kids. They sort of 8 and 9 now, or sorry, 9 and 10 now. They pretty much had an eSpring since they've been this high. They can taste the water. Believe it or not, as we get older, we destroy our taste buds with all the curries, the hot foods, all the chocolates, all the weird and wonderful things we put into our mouth. And kids don't know. And our kids now, if they go out to people's houses, often people will give them water, and then they'll disguise it with either whatever, some sort of a Oros or whatever it might be in their juice. They actually pick up the glass and smell, and they say, "Mommy, Daddy, this is puffy water." Now, I mean, you know, they don't know anything. They don't know about marketing or advertising or anything like that. That's just kids. They go around and they won't actually drink other people. They walk around and they say, "This is puffy water." They can smell it. And you know, since we've changed, we've had our kids on the sort of multivitamins, and we've had them on the eSpring for years and years now, our kids hardly ever get sick. And if they do get sick, their ability to recover is unbelievable. And it's only two things that I can point at. So, and then absolutely, I think it's our moral duty. You know, now you know. You didn't know when you came in here. And that's not because you were a bad person or you were a good person. It's just you didn't know. Now that you know, now you have a duty to do something about it. And tell people, because people don't actually know. It's not known. It's sort of hushed and kept underneath and sort of put underneath the carpet. I don't know why. But it's a major issue here. It's not an issue here, it's an issue all around the world. Water is a big problem. So from a costing point of view, an eSpring is pretty much maybe a big ticket item. Depends on how you want to look at it. But an eSpring literally does 5,000 liters. So that's going to work out, if my maths is correct, I must just check here. I think it works out to about 13, 14 liters a day. You can double check me on that. So that's every single day that a family is going to use. And most families that I'm aware of never ever get through something like that. And that's what it's going to give you, 5,000 liters. So if you work it out, if you bought 5,000 liters of bottled water, and I think I'm being pretty conservative to say that it's at 5 Rand a liter, what do you reckon? That's going to cost you 25 grand for the year. That's a pretty decent knock. Okay, work it out. The eSpring, if you buy it, it's going to work you out to 1 Rand 83 per liter. Okay, and your second year, all you're then going to do after that is you're just going to replace the actual filter, and that's going to work out at 38 cents per liter, which is very economical. Okay, I've got a bit of a video clip here, which I hope it's going to play. Here we go. Which, if you can get the water or something in there, it'll actually take the water out. And this is about a minute clip of, this is just a converted eSpring, where obviously they're pouring in there now, and he's going to use that black sucking thing to create pressure, and you'll see that it actually takes the water out of Coke. So I'll let that just play. Okay, so it's creating some pressure now. The Coke's been pulled through the actual filter, and there we go, water. Pretty neat, huh? I'm just waiting for the next system so that we can actually we can change water into wine. Then that'll also really be very, very good. So, but ladies and gents, that's pretty much all from my side. I hope you got some good value. I hope there's a bit of information that you got out tonight. But honestly, chat to the person that you're working with. They'll be able to give you some more information. It comes in 2 different colors, white and extra white. So this you can pretty much put in on the top of your kitchen counter, and also you can put it underneath your kitchen. It just depends on how your kitchen sort of the layout looks. This is a computer, and what this does is this works out everything for you. So what you'll see over here is it counts down from 100 down to 0. So when you start with the 5,000 liters, you're going to start off at 100, and when it's going to tell you to replace the filter, it's when you're down to 0, and that should give you a year or 5,000 liters, whichever comes first. Okay, it'll actually tell you there's a sort of red line that comes over here that says to replace, and you can't jippo the machine. We've tried, we've put in different filters in different machines, and it works out everything. So the beauty that I like with this is that you can pretty much leave it somewhere in your kitchen. You don't have to worry about it, you don't have to think about it, and it'll actually tell you what you need to do. And the beauty with that is most people that I come across are busy running around hectic. There's certain sort of systems out there that unless you change this or you have to change that, and you have to monitor that. So unless you're incredibly diligent, most people fall way short of that. Then inside over here, what it has is, you take it out like that, and this is the actual filter. So this is all that you're going to replace. This thing sort of comes off like that. It sort of squeezes off, and then you put it back on, and that's all that you're going to replace. And then there's obviously that UV light that's built into the middle of this. It sits on your counter, you do nothing. It's got, grab this over here, the piping that fits on the top, and what you end up doing is the water, so this obviously fits onto your tap in your kitchen somewhere, and the water goes inside here, it goes into the machine, it does what it needs to do, it comes back out, and all you're then going to do is you're going to pull out this little sort of knob thing over here, and your purified water is going to come out there. So when you want to wash your dishes and you don't want to use obviously the eSpring water, you can let this thing, it'll be down, and you can use hot and cold water as per normal. When you want to fill up your kettle or your stuff, your pots and pans to cook with your your water, you just pull it out, and that's the beauty of it. And what I also love is that whenever we go away, we actually just take our machine with us. So this last weekend we were away in Shishlui, just take us, put it in a bag, I take it with me, and I've always got my water with me, which is unbelievably convenient. I never ever have to worry about water in any place that I visit, which is just lovely. So hope that all made a lot of sense, and thank you very much for having me tonight.